Okay, so this is kind of a follow-up to this other video I did a ways back. In lieu of doing like secondary riders and then tertiary riders and so on, I figured it might be neater to organize them by series. I'm doing Kamen Rider Gaim first because this series shares a head writer with Fate Zero and the third Lost Belt. It seemed like an appropriate intersection to start at. It's totally not because I figured that all the riders of this series would be easy to sort into class containers, as they all have distinct signature weapons. And I definitely wasn't punished immediately for my slothful hubris when I immediately had to tackle the titular rider himself, who in classic main rider fashion qualifies for everything. It's absurd! Kota Kazuraba even has his own altar, like, twice over. Okay, that's a little hyperbolic. Bujin Gaim is his own guy from a parallel universe who's trying to conquer the world. But given that our Gaim did actually take over a planet, I think an altered Gaim could end up like his Bujin counterpart. Anyway, I should probably reiterate, Rider class is not part of the decision pool. Look, they're all Kamen Riders. They all qualify by default. It's too straightforwardly obvious. Beyond the classes that Gaim qualifies for because he has forms that fit neatly into those class containers, he also works in the Ruler Extra class. Kota as a character is very middle of the road. The ideology he eventually settles on is something of a mishmash of that of his compatriot riders, and that makes him really well suited to being a neutral arbiter. But I'm going to stick with my guns and echo what I said before. Gaim works best as a saber, because he is very pop culture sword-wielding samurai coded. And he has a lot of finishers that use bladed weapons. Those attacks would be among his noble phantasms. This commenter made a really good point on my previous video about Gaim fitting just as well as an archer because he has long-range options out the wazoo, and it occurred to me that the same logic also kind of applies to Kamen Rider Zangetsu, because Takatoura Kuroshima is similarly never limited to strictly close-range combat, even though he is also a very good fit for saber. Zangetsu is also one of the very, very few Kamen Riders for which a shield is a core part of their iconography, so I really want to put him in the Shielder class. However, I think he's actually the best fit in the Ruler class. Takatoura never really gets the chance to actively try at the deifying golden fruit, but you never got the impression that he would have used it for his own gain. And he does technically get sent back to the world of the conscious living by a god to, spread the good word and continue his duties, so that's pretty saintly. Gaim's secondary rider is Kaito Kumon. In spite of his signature weapon being the Bana Spear, he wants to be a saber so bad. Kaito, that's not a slashing weapon! Stop! In fairness, he qualifies, as he does the Archer class. And on top of that, Kaito's unwavering obsession with power makes him a pretty decent fit for the Berserker class container too. Though, because that aspect of him stems from a vengeful streak against the systems that be, he'd arguably be snugger in the Avenger class. All that said, I think Kamen Rider Baron's best class is still Lancer. The traitorous Mitsuzane Kuroshima shares a paralleling obsession to Kaito's, though in opposition to Kaito, who wants to tear down the status quo, Mitsuzane seeks to preserve it instead. His downward spiral even drives him to attempt fratricide at one point, so the Assassin class? Mitsuzane also impersonates his brother for a stretch, so I suppose that means this very specific aspect of Zangetsu Shin can potentially fill a Faker class container. Though I don't think it's as good a fit as the Berserker class that I've been hinting at. Yeah, that obsession of his takes him into some very not good places. But even that is superseded by how Kamen Rider Ryugen's iconography very much positions him as the gunslinger of the cast. So I think that's an easy archer class, if he can't swing for gunner, that is. Ryoji Hase is an interesting one, because even though Kamen Rider Kurokage's transformation tagline and the design of the suit imply ninja, in practice, Hase doesn't do a lot of ninjaing at all. Maybe there's a mass-produced Kurokage trooper who's a better fit for the assassin class, but this one is definitely a lancer. Gridon's kind of a problem, though. Like, how do you even categorize a guy whose signature weapon is a fancy mallet? Jonochi Hideyasu does have one singular stint as Kurokage, so he does qualify for lancer, but that's not his signature mantle. Thank Gaim that Gridon has a form with a sword, so I can just shove him into a saber class container. And it's actually kind of fitting, because Jonochi's mentor, Oren Pierre Alfonso, is also easily a saber. Kamen Rider Bravo does go berserk once, so, you know. Kamen Rider Knuckle is another annoying one, because he just punches people. I was really tempted to walk back on the no riders rule, just for these two nutheads, by the way. Anyway, I'm gonna cram Zack in the assassin class because he tried to do a cheeky little one of those towards the tail end of the series. The attempt didn't exactly succeed, but, like, if Jinka counts, right? Kamen Rider Zangetsu Shin was mentioned earlier, but it does count as a separate Kamen Rider handle for some reason. So yeah, Archer when Takatora's wearing the mask, Faker when it's Mitsuzane. In general, Energy Lock users tend to be equipped with the Sonic Arrow as their primary piece of kit, so they get to be archers by default. That's Sigurd and Marika sorted. But I do want to single out Duke in particular, because Ryoma Sengoku canonically started out using lemon arms. That's an obvious saber. He is very proficient with the Sonic Arrow though, because, well, he invented the thing, along with the bulk of the arsenal making up the series' power system. But because he's such an inventive intellectual type, he might actually be the most ideal in a caster class container. Oh, and there was that one time he was resurrected as an alien cyborg to serve as an envoy for the invading Mega Hex, so he also qualifies for Foreigner. Kamen Rider Kurokage Shin, yeah, it's another Zangetsu Shin situation. It's a souped-up Kurokage, Lancer. Kamen Rider Mars is, at least on the surface, an easy saber. Kogani's whole thing is that he's an artificial replication of the nigh omnipotence-granting golden fruit, and he acts as if he's that all-powerful. So yeah, he's literally fake. Kogani does come back as the vindictive Kamen Rider Jam, another mantle that is quite saber-looking, but given that he's here to try at some petty supervillain-style revenge, probably a Venture class. Kamen Rider Kamuro spends his one and only battle as a soccer ball. Yeah, okay Lapis, you do you. Beyond that, Kamuro looks caster-coded, so yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Kamen Rider Idunn? Whatever. Obvious saber. Kamen Rider Tyrant is another Sonic Arrow user, so you would think that he's an easy archer, right? Except, Tyrant never actually uses the bow as a bow. It's Kaito. I blame Kaito. Tyrant is his supervillain, and Kaito clearly infected him with that nonsense. Alfred is so committed to the slashies that when he mutates into a monster, he's armed with a sword. So I'm just gonna put him in Saber and move on. Kamen Rider Saber is regrettably not a Saber class candidate, even though Kuuga does view himself as a messiah of sorts. He got turned into a science ghost via experimentation and decided to start a cult. You know, As you do. Could be a saber, could be an archer. Gonna put him in assassin class, actually, because he makes a lot of his cult members. Yeah. Kamen Rider Black Baron almost thematically works as Baron's alter, as Shura's acting on a more twisted interpretation of Kaito's ideals. They're just not the same guy. Anyway, Lancer. Kamen Rider Sylphy is also a Lancer, and I think that's every... Wait. 15, right, 15. Kamen Rider 15. 15 has the power sets of every main rider from the start of the millennia up until Gaim. There were 15 of them at that point. So, technically, he qualifies for everything they do, but his unique signature weapon is a sword, so, yeah, saber. Okay, I think that's everyone, excluding stage shows and even more obscure ancillary media. I'm pretty sure that's every armored rider. Toodles!